Hello, dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Life of Love, where we gather with curiosity and love and understanding and compassion. And every week we meet to see how we can add to our life of love and help our earth, because no one can live their best life without this bowl that we live in, this wonderful earth that gives us so much. And so this is a very special episode this week with Greg Peterson. He has devoted his life already to the study of he's a lifelong student of permaculture and society and sociology. So he has a long-term podcast. He has several podcasts, but the biggest one he has right now is the Urban Farm podcast. And he's coming to us from Asheville, North Carolina, one of my favorite places to be outside and look at art and creation. And I just can't wait to create this episode with you, Greg. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So I'm excited too, because I've just skipped over my notes. I wanted to tell everyone that you started out in Phoenix and that you're bringing joy and knowledge and multidiscipline focus to your commitment to society, nature, and sustainability for our health. Whew, that's a good resume there.
Yeah, thanks.
I love it. Well, thanks for being on Life of Love. I can't wait to share everything, all the nuggets of wisdom that you've picked up and the insight. And it's just such an important topic to me and dear to my heart. So this is a great, great time for me.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, Greg, can you share with my audience what sparked you initially to even care? Because a lot of us just take a lot of this stuff for granted.
Right.
So what sparked you?
Well, I don't know. I was as close as I've ever been able to get to it. I was born with it.
Mm-hmm.
Around the time I was 9 or 10, I got my first fish aquarium, and I was interested in raising fish to eat, not to watch, in a fish aquarium. And when I was 14, I wrote a paper for my biology class. I was, about 8th grade or something like that, on how we were overfishing the oceans. And since then, it's just been a roller coaster of our food system health, learning about it, and sharing with people the impact that food has on our life. And you mentioned several terms, sociology. I went back to college late in life and got a sociology degree, interestingly enough. And along the way, I discovered sometimes call it the P word, permaculture. And I like to call permaculture the art and science of working with nature. So in 1991, I'm standing on my front porch and I pull the mail out of the mailbox. I'm 30 years old at this time. And there's this flyer in the mailbox about permaculture. And I stood there, I'm right this moment, 30 some years later, I'm standing there as I'm seeing this real time. And it's this flyer for this thing called permaculture. And I remember running into the house. I was married at the time. And I said, Michelle, I'm going to do this course. Come and do it with me. I have no idea how that flyer found its way into my mailbox. And I dove into a 72-hour permaculture design course. And permaculture is, I like to call it the art and science of working with nature. How do we work in the flow of nature rather than against nature? We human beings, we think we know how to do it better than nature. And I have
I was just going to say your quote from 1996.
Yeah, you want me to say it or do you want to read it?
Yes, I'd be honored for you to say it because it sets the stage for what we're talking about. So
yeah, our downfall as a species is that we're arrogant enough to think we can control Mother Nature and stupid enough to think it's our job. For me, discovering permaculture, I'm getting chills right now as I share this 34 years later. Discovering permaculture was wow, there's something that we can call the way that I think, because especially back then, what I saw in farming did not make sense to me. I visited a fish farm in 1981 or 82, And they were harvesting the fish, cleaning the fish. And when you catch a fish, you get about 30% meat and 70% everything else. And they were throwing away everything else. They were throwing away 70% of that fish.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the early 80s, I put on paper what we would now call a regenerative fish farm. And basically what that means is that you have a farm that produces nothing but products.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be a product that you sell. It could be a product, in the case of the fish leftovers, fertilizer for your things that you're growing.
Mm-hmm.
So putting together a circular system where everything gets used in the system, because when you think about nature, nature uses everything. There's nothing to throw away. There's no pollution. There's no waste in nature. It all gets used. It all gets used. And when I discovered permaculture, it was like, wow, we can actually build systems where everything gets used. So that's been my job for the past 33 years, is to figure out how to put systems in place that in permaculture we call them regenerative.
Mm.
Human beings make a particular kind of system. It is a degenerative system. Degenerative systems, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Everything that we're talking about, everything that we've created in our culture is degenerative. The headphones you have on, the desk that you're sitting in front of, the computer, the cars, the roads, our cell phones, they break down over time. And when they break down, they get thrown away, wherever away is.
Mm.
And so studying permaculture for 33 years at this point has given me an opportunity to look to see how we can put more regenerative systems in place in our culture. And now I want to point out that I said more regenerative
Mm-hmm.
because I don't believe, and I've been looking for 30 some years for human regenerative systems. I don't believe we as human beings can actually be totally regenerative. So it becomes a process by which we look at the systems that we have in our life and push them more toward regenerative. So here's a perfect example. I'm a gardener. I've been growing food for almost 50 years. I started in my teens. Again, I don't have a clue how that happened. It's what I'm supposed to be doing here. And when you eat, there's scraps, right? You have food scraps. And so at the urban farm, the house where I lived for 32 years in Phoenix, we had what I called a regenerative composting system in place. And here's what it looked like. So we make food, harvest it out of the yard, buy it at the grocery store, buy it at the farmer's market. We harvest food, we cut up what we cut up, and there's a pile of extra stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You could throw that away, wherever away is, or you could make it into something. And there were multiple things that I used to make it into at the urban farm. Thing number one was we had chickens in our backyard. Chickens are pets. They're great diggers. They eat bugs. They eat weeds. This is called stacking functions, by the way. And they give us eggs every day. So those chickens were turning those food scraps into eggs and chicken poop. And chicken poop is fertilizer for our garden. Thing number two that I did at the urban farm was worm composting. And that's what I've done here. So we've been in Asheville, North Carolina now for 2 years. We bought 4 acres just outside of Asheville. And the first thing that I put in place was a worm composting system. Worm poop or worm castings are gardener's gold. They're absolutely magical to put on your gardens. So what I was doing in Phoenix was I had a large worm composting system that I built, and those worms were turning the food scraps into fertilizer. The third thing that I would do with worm compost or with composting is something called black soldier flies. Black soldier flies will eat 50% of their weight a day in food scraps. And they make these little grubs. You've probably seen them if you have a compost bin. You've seen them in your compost bin. You may have seen them flying around your yard. They look like a wasp. And they're these little protein nuggets that, as larvae, that the chickens love to eat. So I was turning food scraps into grubs that the chickens loved.
So wait, okay, so how do you contain these soldier fly things?
Just in a bucket. I set up a bucket system.
And they're in there,
And they're in there.
Supposed to just slide the compost in there, or your food
just
waste.
Put the food scraps on top, and they eat it. And then after about 3 or 4 weeks.
So it's the larvae in there. It's not like you open the lid and the flies come out. It's the larvae. Okay.
Exactly.
I was like, how in the world? Because I had some worm compost in my basement.
Very good.
I did, but it got a little stinky. I don't know. I wasn't very good at it. I think I overfed them.
Yes, there's definitely a process.
So it wasn't, my husband wasn't a big fan of having worm castings in the basement, but you can't put them outside because they'll freeze in the winter.
In the winter, that's right. So,
but I love the idea. I totally adore the idea. But the larvae, and I have a friend who has chickens, and sometimes they have to buy things to feed them. So that's a really great tip. I'm going to make sure that's in our show notes because
perfect.
Okay.
And then the fourth thing I did with the scraps was they eventually made it into the compost pile if there was anything left. And all of these, what I want to point out, what makes this regenerative is we've got food scraps coming in. I'm either feeding it to the chickens, the compost pile, the soldier flies, or the worms.
Mm-hmm.
They're all making something else that actually helps me build soil. So then all of that, the chicken poop and the compost goes into the soil to grow healthy food that we then harvest. We prepare the food, we have scraps, and the cycle starts all over again.
And then you don't have to put that resource out by the curb and pay for someone to come haul it to wherever away is.
Exactly. Well, and here's a crazy term. So in 2008 or 2009, I was working on a project in Phoenix, and we did some research. And according to the EPA, Phoenix metropolitan, there's 4.7 million people in the Phoenix metropolitan area. They make a certain amount of food scraps that get thrown away every day. I'm going to give you the number. I want you to tell me the timeline.
Okay.
All right. So in Phoenix makes 1,100 tons of food waste every
11. I'd say every 3 days.
Every day.
Every day. Well,
1,100 tons of food waste.
So that's why that major golf tournament's hosted by the waste management company there every year.
There you go.
Because there's so much.
There you go. It's a crazy amount of food waste. And when you throw it away, it goes into the landfill. It makes methane. When you compost it, when you turn it into soil, it helps you grow healthy plants. And I know that was a long way around the barn to get to regenerative, but those kind of systems, when we connect all the dots in a circle, that's how nature works. And that's how what we do in permaculture is we look to see how we can mimic natural systems so that they're circular, not linear.
And that goes with your quote. I mean, you don't have to recreate the wheel, just see what's going on around you and go with the flow.
Yeah.
You don't have to carry it all on your shoulders, just be a participant that doesn't inhibit.
Right.
I
go
love
with the
that.
Flow.
Go with the flow. It's concerning because there's so much, well, like you said, food waste, but then also the way the resources are used to get food from the farm, from the rows of whatever's growing to the distribution center to the, and I write about this in my book, it's like, if you can buy local and eat local, it's just more fresh, it's more nutritious. You get to meet that farmer sometimes. There's co-ops. There's a lot of options that are a lot better for everybody.
Right, yep. Well, that's one of the reasons that Heidi and I decided to move to Asheville is the sorry about that, thriving nature of the food system here. And I'm not talking restaurants, although the restaurants are amazing. I'm talking about the amount of small farms here. The first week we were here, I found out about this organization called ASAP. It stands for Appalachian Sustainable Food something. And the area that I live in used to be a huge grower of tobacco. And when the tobacco market collapsed 30 years, this nonprofit started to teach tobacco growers how to transition to growing other things. And there are literally thousands of small farms in this area of the Appalachian Mountains. It's amazing to see. So that was one of the big draws for us here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was going to ask you, something came across my feed today, and it was this system, and I was going to ask you if, obviously you have your thing in place and it's awesome, but these things keep coming up. It's called, I think this one is called the well, and you put all your scraps in, and in 30 days, it creates what they showed look like soil. And then if you didn't have a yard to put it in, your flowers you wanted to give better soil to, they'll come and pick it up.
Interesting.
And I never had seen that before. I'd seen that, we'll make your waste into soil, but not that somebody who's living in an apartment could put it, just take the bag and then put it in a box and
send it to them. Oh, there you go.
So I thought that was really interesting. I didn't know if you had heard of that, but I guess it's on my mind and it comes up on my feed. It's crazy.
I've seen systems like this before. They're not actually true composting systems. I haven't found one yet that's a true composting system, because composting is a biological process and it takes months. The couple that I saw they were dehydrating the food. And so is it a good thing? Well, if you are turning your food scraps into something that can, eventually go into a garden, yeah, I think it's a good thing.
All right. Well, it'd be something, I guess. And
right.
Then, well, I have to tell you what freaks people out about this. Whenever you're talking about poop and then food, and it's a stigmatism. It's like, and I grew up, my grandma always had a really great strawberry patch, and she'd take her dirty dishwater with all the pieces of food, and it was just, she'd save the dishwasher water all day, and she'd just give her strawberry patch this wonderful food waste water, and she had the sweetest, most delicious berries, and who knows what else she put in there.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
They were so happy. So I don't get all that freaked out about it. I'm an Ohio girl, and it's like you do something different in Ohio. And so sometimes when you talk about like the worm poop or the chicken poop and it being part of it, how can you let people know that there's a sterilization process, or how can you alleviate their concerns about sanitation around it? Because I think it's something everyone thinks when you say it, but not a lot of people want to ask.
Yeah, well, the problem that we have with poop in our culture and farming is usually comes up around using human poop for growing food, which is not a good idea.
No.
But with worms and chickens, we're so far away from them genetically that having the stuff that comes out of the rear end it's a nitrogen nugget. And as it goes into the soil, as it works its way into the soil, it's changing from that nitrogen nugget, and the biology of the soil. And I talk about healthy soil and how to create it. We can talk about that in a minute. The biology of the soil, all the microbes and microbial stuff that's in there, transitions whatever we think might be in there that's nasty into something that the plants can uptake. So it's the same process that happens in nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a natural system that happens in nature. And when we throw chemicals at it, it breaks that system down. In fact, throwing chemicals at our gardens is more problematic than throwing chicken poop and worm poop at our gardens. Because
Okay.
what's happening with the chemicals is they're negatively impacting the biology of the soil. And in order to grow healthy, happy food that tastes really great, you have to have healthy soil. And there's 5 components of healthy soil, and dirt is one of them. And that dirt, usually, if that's all you have, good luck growing anything. So what we have to do is we have to facilitate building healthy soil, like what happened in a forest. So in a forest, what happens? Leaves fall, branches fall, deer come along, birds come along, they poop, and the soil in the forest breaks down to this really nice stuff that grows food, that grows plants. And what we do in permaculture is we look, how can we build soil in a happy way that grows healthy, nutritious food? And so that's where my 5 components of healthy soil come in. Dirt is part of it, and y'all have plenty of dirt. Airspace, water, organic matter, and everything that's alive in the soil. And in the organic matter, that includes poop, and it includes sticks and branches and leaves and mushrooms and all kinds of stuff. In fact, if you have mushrooms showing up in your garden, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. If you have mushrooms in your garden, you're doing something right.
Nice.
So if when you're starting your garden, the fix is to add organic matter. So remember, 5 components: dirt, airspace, water, organic matter, and everything that's alive in the soil. By adding organic matter, and I'm talking compost, I'm talking manures, I'm talking leaves, one of the best things, and it drives me nuts when people rake up their leaves and throw them away. Here it is again, wherever away is.
Wherever away is, yeah.
And throws them away, because those nutrients in those leaves are amazing. Some of the best compost that you can have is leaf mold compost, because those leaves are falling from the trees and they have those nutrients in them. And when you're raking them up and throwing them away, you're throwing away all those nutrients.
Yeah,
So,
and I imagine leaves, like, just the way they're designed, they also invite air spaces too because of their shape, and they have a little stem and
lets water get in. And so the good news is the fix to broken dirt is to add lots and lots of organic matter. And one of the things, so I'm a new gardener here in Asheville, North Carolina. There were no garden spaces here in my house. There was none of that. So I'm having to build all my own. And I've been doing raised beds because that's the quickest way to get garden beds up and running. And I've been spending $30 to build the raised beds out of wood and $300 to put healthy soil in the beds. That may sound extreme, but I only have to do it once. Because then what I'll do next year is I'll just come in with some worm castings on top or a little bit of fresh compost, and that adds the nutrition we need going forward.
Very nice.
Yeah. And back to your poop question again. The poop has nutrients in it. It has nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's the NPK that you see on the bag, or the 3 numbers. You'll see on fertilizers, you'll see 3 numbers. It'll say 10, 10, 10, or 362, or 555, or one I saw the other day, 30, 0, 0. And the first number is the amount of nitrogen, and the amount of nitrogen makes green. So somebody was putting a 30-0-0 on his lawn.
They just want it greener.
He just wanted it greener, which is
Yeah.
okay to do that.
Mm-hmm.
However, usually anything over the number 10 in those numbers is non-organic. And I am an organic aficionado. I only do organic. So the stuff I fertilize with is like 665 or 111. And the organic ones are easier for the plants to uptake. Plus, the organic ones don't negatively impact the soil life, because it's that soil life, the microbes and the mycorrhiza and the little bugs and all that kind of stuff, that is actually working with the plants and connecting the plant's roots with the nutrients in the soil. And what you get out of this is better tasting food. The food tastes better and it's better for you. Plus, from a health perspective, you're not uptaking those chemicals, because any of those chemicals that you use in your garden end up in your food, end up in your body, and then end up with this happening. Your listeners can't see this, but my right hand, this is my right hand all the time these days. They call it an essential tremor. And I don't know what's too essential about it for me, but it's a tremor.
And you think it's from contaminants?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. It's a neurological thing. And I have been, for the past 3 years, I've been trying to figure out where lead comes from. I have an unusually high amount of lead in my body. And we tested everything. We, are just really super conscious about what we're putting in. We only do organic. And Consumer Reports about, 3 months ago, put out a report on lead in chocolate.
Oh, wow.
And I used to eat a couple of pounds of chocolate a month. It was all organic. So, when it's organic, we think we're doing something okay, right?
But we're not testing for lead in our chocolate.
Exactly.
If you're not testing for it, you're not going to find it.
Right, exactly. So I'm actually in the process of doing some lead testing on some products. But one of I don't know if you saw this, a couple of months ago, there was this, and it happened in North Carolina, this family, their kids, their 3 and 5-year-old, ended up with lead poisoning. So they tested their house. They had the state come in and look for lead in paint. They tested all their food. They were doing everything they could to figure it out. And this mom was persistent, and she finally figured it out. You know what? She started a national movement. The lead was coming from applesauce.
Whoa.
And the applesauce, they were using cinnamon in the applesauce, and the lead was coming from the cinnamon.
Oh my goodness.
Wherever they were producing the cinnamon, they were cutting it with a product to make it last longer that was high in lead. And so that, all the flags went off at the FDA, and, they did a recall and all that kind of stuff. But those are the kinds of things that we have to start paying attention to, and it comes in our food system. And, this tremor is really propelling forward my mission in life. My mission, so in 1991, several things happened. I discovered permaculture. I discovered a book called Ishmael. It's by Daniel Quinn. It's a fictional work about a conversation between a gorilla and a man. And the gorilla's the teacher. And Ishmael is the gorilla. He's teaching us how our food system has become what it is. And one of the things that they share in the book is that food used to be free. The third thing that happened, right? The third thing that happened for me in 1991, which kind of pushed that whole notion forward, was a friend of mine went sailing in the South Pacific, and they anchored in an island looking for a grocery store. And the people on the island kind of looked at them funny, and they said, go pick your own.
Yeah. Well, that's why I loved this book, Wild Edible Plants,
Yes.
our food's all around us. We just need to learn. We have to remember the gifts. We're
Yes.
abundant. It's a
Yeah.
myth of separation, right? And we
Oh, I
just
like
have to
that. I've not heard
remember.
that before. Myth of separation. I'm going to look that one up.
No, I mean, I just made it up.
Oh, all right.
There's a special term. I forget what it is. It's a spiritual concept that, the idea that you're alone. You're never alone. So I
Yes.
can't think of the exact term. So I just said myth of separation. Because it is
Nice.
a myth.
It
We're all
is.
connected.
Exactly. Exactly. And then, so the fourth thing that happened for me in 1991 set me on seriously on this journey. And that was, I did a seminar at a place called Landmark Education. It was their advanced course. And they had me create my vision for my life. And the vision, now remember, this was in 1991. That's what, 33 years ago? I am the person on the planet responsible for transforming our global food system.
Oh man, that's a lot to carry.
It
You
is,
can't carry
but
that all.
I'm not carrying it.
Okay, good.
It's what gets me up in the morning.
Hmm.
It's a vision for myself. It's not a burden. It's what has me drive forward. It's what has me do everything that I've done around the food system in the past 30 years. And
Nice.
figuring out how to eat local. I've said this many times over the past couple decades. The most important thing we can be doing right now is figuring out where our food comes from and how to grow our own. Because the stuff that's in the grocery store that's ultra processed is not food.
Mm-hmm.
It's not food. The stuff
More and more
that's
is coming out. Like they're putting
exactly.
this coating on it you just
And
if you
it's
start looking into it, you get a little bit disillusioned, but there's hope. There's hope when you educate yourself and then you realize
exactly
there's other options. And it's easy. It's a matter of 3 days you can grow your own sprouts. Like you can sprout
right.
in your windowsill in a mason jar. Like just
Yep.
look it up, people on YouTube. You can make your own microgreens in 3 days.
I can't remember his name, but I had a guy maybe 5 years ago on my podcast, and Sprout Salads is his book. He wrote an entire book on how to make a salad out of sprouts on your windowsill in 3 days.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy awesome?
But we've been put in these formulations or these commercial consumerism, like you go here to buy, and it's a false narrative until you can figure out there's other options. Like we've been fed a way to live and you don't have to swallow it.
Exactly. I love all those metaphors and that what you just said. That's amazing. Love it.
I feel it in my heart, and I can't say that I have a self-sustaining garden in my backyard, but I
don't either.
have my favorite things. I have my blueberry bushes, and I just love my blueberry bushes.
Yep.
And I have my fig trees, and I have my herbs, and then I grow pollen, the things that bring the hummingbirds back.
Yep.
My salvia and my butterfly. It's not a butterfly bush. What is it called again? Lantana. They love my lantana.
Yes.
And I just saw my first hummingbird right before the eclipse hit on Monday.
Nice.
And I was like, welcome back, guys. Like, that's how I want people to know. Just plant and grow what brings you joy. And that's the first step. And it makes a difference. Just anything that you can get in the ground and be proud of and take care of, nurture, you're creating, you're sustaining, and it's beautiful. It doesn't have to be this big thing. We just have to support it. Mother Nature knows how to do it. We just have to let it.
Yeah. So you mentioned sprouts. That's usually the second thing that I tell people that they can do. The first thing that you can do, the most expensive thing in the grocery store to buy and the easiest thing to grow are?
Well, green onions are really easy.
Yes, they are. And herbs. Onions are an herb. Basil in a sunny windowsill. You can do it. It's really that simple. And the key to growing it successfully is make sure you put a nice potting soil in that pot. Remember, I spend $30 on the garden bed and $300 on the soil that goes in it. You get what you pay for when it comes to the soil, and the soil is the basis for growing healthy, happy, organic food.
So where would you tell people? Would they go to like their local nursery to buy that potting soil?
One of the things that I tell people to look for is first, local if you can do it. There's
Mhm.
this really great, in fact, you can probably get this soil where you're at as well. It's called Dirt Craft.
Okay.
They're a soil manufacturer. They're taking compostables, they're composting it, and the company's called Dirt Craft. So if you can use Dirt Craft soil, that's great. I buy it in big 3-yard totes.
Hmm.
So I buy it 3 yards at a time.
Nice.
The next thing, so Dirt Craft for me is local.
Hmm.
If you're in Phoenix, Arizona, where I lived for 55 years, there's a company called Tank's Green Stuff. They have amazing soil products there.
Hmm.
So find local, number one. Number two, you're looking for something that's OMRI certified.
Okay.
OMRI certified soils are grown organically. So they're not using chemicals and harsh things to make them. And interestingly enough, the company you just mentioned, Miracle Grow, has
Hmm.
an OMRI certified product.
Oh, that's exciting. It's
So
catching.
exactly. So that's really what you're looking for is the OMRI
Okay. I'm
certification.
recertified. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. And I put together an entire series of videos on soil,
Hmm.
and you can find them at healthysoilhacked.com.
Yes, yes. I will put that in the show notes. I have it
Yeah.
on. Yes. Okay.
So
That's good
that,
to know.
yeah, go there and learn. It's free and it'll get you a lot more information about growing your gardens.
Yeah. I mean, it's a concern, and when you realize the difference and the benefits and then the joy
Yes.
of having that and sharing it, like, it's like if you can give your neighbor something that you grew, like we always want to bring a gift over. Why does it have to be
Right?
something plastic or something ordered from Amazon? Let's bring them.
Oh my God, you see how excited I'm getting here, right?
Yeah.
So this property that we bought is 4 acres in Asheville. It's a
Hmm.
dream property for me for the past 20 years. I've been wanting to go to someplace quiet. And off that direction, off to my left, is a road. So the road on the right is the main road. The road on the left is a road into a neighborhood. And we have a downstairs garage that sits on the road into the neighborhood. And I had this vision when I moved in here. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, wouldn't it be cool to put a farm stand
Yes.
out next to the garage so
Right
that when
there.
people drive by, they can, pick up what they want out of our farm stand and drop something in the bucket or not.
Yeah, or Venmo you. I mean, we have all these ways to pay each other now. Just
Exactly. So remember the worm composting? So
yes.
I did worm composting for a year when I first arrived here. And
Hmm.
I was taking the worm poop out of the bottom and I was adding it to our gardens. And one of the things that I do when I plant fruit trees, that's one of my big things. I love fruit trees. You plant them once and you get food for decades or even hundreds of
Hmm.
years, right? And so when I plant fruit trees, I put a pound of worm castings in each hole. Well, I didn't have that much, so I was putting like maybe a half a pound in each hole.
Hmm.
And magically, in those worm castings were tomato seeds. And
Oh,
those
because you had given like tomatoes that you didn't get a chance to eat. They were part of the compost that the worms had processed. Oh my
exactly,
God. Yeah.
exactly. So last season, from June to October, in June, the tomato plants showed up. So last summer, I planted 160 fruit trees and berry bushes.
Wow.
That was part of getting the farm in here, right? In fact, 100 of them are elderberries, so I'm an elderberry farmer now. And
Nice.
one of the things that happened is we had, from those worm castings, in the rows where the fruit trees are at, we had over 30 tomato plants grow.
Wow.
And we were harvesting 5 pounds of tomatoes a day off
So
of those.
you could just put them by the road and be like, hey, who wants to make tomato sauce or whatever, salsa?
That's
So good.
exactly what I did. So we have a
Oh.
Facebook page for our street. So I put a table down there that said free tomatoes from Greg and Heidi's farm. And I posted it on Facebook, and the response in the neighborhood was amazing. We had a couple of families bringing us baked goods. We had one guy that works at a nursery. He was bringing us nursery plants just because I gave away that stuff. And it was always my intent to put a farm stand down there just to feed people. I don't need to get paid for it.
Yeah.
So that was yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was a magical moment for me. It's like, wow, how cool is that?
I mean, it's just, that's what we're here. We're here to love each other and have community and feel a part of something and just feel connected. So I just love that you're finding that in Asheville, and you have more peace, and you did so much in Phoenix. I was watching YouTube videos from like 10, 20 years ago, and you were teaching people how to do I think it was vertical planting. It was a whole webinar.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the tower garden?
The tower garden.
Oh, let me tell you about, I get excited about this stuff. So in 2010, I get this email from a friend of mine in Phoenix, and she says, Greg, you've got to check this out. And she sent me to I think it was a YouTube video on Facebook, and about this thing called a tower garden. And a tower garden is a vertical hydroponic growing system. They call it aeroponics, but it's essentially you put the nutrients in the water, and the water waters the plants, and it basically looks like a 8-foot tall Christmas tree when it's grown out.
And they're amazing. Some of them are just stunning. It's
absolutely amazing. And so I actually, now I had 1/3 of an acre in Phoenix. I had a old growth food forest in Phoenix. Basically what that meant was that you could just walk out into the yard and harvest food. And in 2010, I bought a tower garden. And what we used to do with the tower garden is we would start it up, because in Phoenix, it gets to 110, 115 degrees in the summer. You can't grow greens for salads like that. So in Phoenix, we used to run the tower garden from March till October, and we grew lettuce, spinach, greens for salads, and we grew it inside.
Nice.
And so I it's another technology. It's another way to grow healthy food for you. And the cool thing about the tower garden is that the nutrients that they were putting into the tower garden they're all natural.
Oh, good. It's like, well, sometimes my friend, she told me about the Neptunes. It's like a liquid fish. It smells like fish when you open the thing.
Yep.
And
I just got some of that as a tester the other day. It's called Foop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. As a podcaster, they send me all kinds of awesome things.
Nice.
So, and here's see the OMRI certified label right there?
Oh yeah, OMRI.
There it is right there. OMRI listed.
This podcast is available on YouTube, so everyone can see the visual, because I really think this is the best to be seen, because this is such an energetic conversation.
Well, it's the most important thing we can be doing right now, because highly processed manufactured food is not good for our health. It is not good for us. And they put chemicals in the food products to make them tastier, so they eat more of them. And it's not good.
Genetically modified things are coming up more and more. It's very, anything natural flavor, people, that's fake. It's not a natural thing. It's a natural flavor.
Exactly. Have you seen the meme running around on social media that talks about oatmeal, one of the major brand of oatmeals, and the list of ingredients in the UK? It's the same product label, but the list of ingredients in the UK is half of what the list of ingredients are in the United States.
And you think you're buying oatmeal, but there's other things.
Exactly. I just buy oats from, have you heard of a place called Azure Standard?
I hadn't heard of that one.
Azure Standard all over the United States, and they bring in 1 load a month. So you place your order, and they've been around since the 70s, and they got a lot of organic products and a lot of bulk products.
Mm-hmm.
And the truck arrives at the appointed time, and 50 people are there to help unload the truck, and you get your stuff. And so I buy bulk oats and all kinds of they have amazing stuff. I bought plant starts there this past month. So
Wow.
yeah.
Nashville's where it's at, man.
Well,
Where-
this is everywhere. This is, I used to do this in Phoenix.
Okay, so it's
It's
nationwide. Wow.
nationwide. As AZURE
Yes.
standard. It's an amazing company.
Nice. I know I have through the Holistic Moms, we do a frontier order.
Yes.
And there's a lot of bulk in there, but we
Yep.
have to have a certain amount, and then it goes to my friend's house, and she has to sort it, and it's a big deal. But we still do it. And I get my organic cinnamon there, and
exactly. But that makes community part of it. You know, I've met so many cool people since I arrived in Asheville at the Azure Standard pickup. In fact, I saw this.
Okay, so that's a great tip. If you want to find your tribe, you want to find people interested in this.
Exactly.
Yes,
I was
great tip.
About a year ago, I was picking up, and there was this name called Zen Honeycut. Have you ever heard of Zen?
No.
Zen Honeycut is the director and founder of Moms Across America.
Okay.
And she's doing all kinds of amazing work. And I mean, I've known her name for years. In fact, I have some friends that are friends with her, but I never got to meet her. And it turns out she's 2 miles down the road from me.
Oh, I love that.
And I made that connection at my Azure Standard pickup. So it's a big part of it's about building community.
Yes. And just take little steps. You don't have to, you're
Right.
not turning granola, you're not changing your lifestyle, you're just adding a little joy,
Right?
however you want to do it.
Yeah. Well, this has been joyful. I mean, how much fun have we had today?
How much fun. It's so great. It's
Oh my
so
gosh.
great. I know my dream.
A hawk just flew by.
Oh, that's right. Well, that's your third eye. Like whenever a hawk comes into your consciousness, is that you're connected to your higher spirituality. That's a very strong symbol. I have hawks that circle my house all the time.
I'll take it.
I'm in my podcast room, so I can't see them, but holy cow, that's really neat. I love that. I know I have a dream of my property that I want to have. It's going to have a spring, a natural spring.
Ah, nice.
That I can get the water from. It's going to have a mountain view. I'm going to have my fruit trees. I want blueberries, blackberries. I'll have to ask you about your elderberries, but definitely blueberries and blackberries, because I just love that. And I'd love to grow mangoes and avocados, but that would probably be at the place where I'd go when it's too cold to be.
Exactly. So elderberries, let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
I have my podcast, the Urban Farm Podcast, and I'm interviewing in December of 2022. I'm interviewing this young lady who I met here in Asheville. Her name is Samara Price, and she is running a elderberry processing company. She's making drinks and
it's so good for your viruses and supplementing your immunity. Yeah.
Exactly. And I said to her, Samara, where are you getting your elderberries? And she said, well, I get a few here and a few there, but most of them come from Europe. And it was, hold on, what?
And elderberry honey is so good too. Like the bees, oh my gosh, it's just so wonderful. Magic.
Yeah. And so I did a little bit of research, and I found that like 90% of our elderberries in this country come from Europe. And I discovered that there is an amazing opportunity. And I'm an entrepreneur. I've had over 30 businesses in my life. I've been self-employed since I was 15. And my brain just works this way. It's like I see an opportunity. So I did a little bit of research. In the moment that I was talking to her, I said, well, heck, I can grow elderberries, not knowing how to do them.
It's like, I'm game.
So in January of 23, I get 100 elderberry sticks. Now, I'm not talking plants. I'm not talking roots. I'm not talking leaves. I'm talking 8-inch elderberry branches. That's it. And I did a little bit of research, and I run a fruit tree education program in Phoenix. I've been doing it for 25 years. We have, as I said earlier, I have a very specific way that we plant fruit trees for their success. And so I planted them in 4x4x9 pots. And by March, so this was January of 23, by March of 23, 98 of them had budded out at a 98% success rate. And we planted 92 of them in the ground last summer. And they went from 8-inch tall sticks to 3-foot tall bushes when they went dormant in October. And they've already broken dormancy this year, and a lot of them have grown a foot already, and it's just April.
They're just so happy there.
They are.
Yeah.
And so I'm an elderberry farmer.
You figured out the recipe. I'm sure you found out exactly what they like,
Yep.
and then you gave it to them and let nature do. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, see a need, fill a need, you know, like.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's what entrepreneurs do.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. Fact, Greg, this has been great.
Oh my God, so much fun. No, I was just going to tell another story. I'm full of them.
I got to run because I have, I'll cut this out, but I train Special Olympic tennis players on Thursday night. So I got to have dinner ready, and I train. We have like 18 people come out from.
Don't cut that out. That's epic.
12.
That is epic. Congratulations. That is so cool.
Oh, it's just what I do. It brings me joy, right? Like I love tennis, and I love all kinds of people. And these people are my friends. I've been doing it for 8 years now. So, I mean, they're my community. They're like people with special needs don't grow up and leave town and graduate college. Some of our athletes go to college, but usually they're in our community for their life with living with their parents and in group homes. And this is a way they get exercise, and we have social time, and it's just really sweet. And we've been getting showers. So I don't even know if it could have rained since I've been down here in my studio. So I got to go check the weather and send out the message if we're doing it.
Oh, there you go.
My phone is blowing up. They're like, Miss Julie, Coach Julie.
Well, awesome for you. Congratulations.
It's just what I do. But Greg.
Exactly. Yeah. So for all you listeners out there, find that piece. For me, it's teaching people how to grow food. For you, it's working with young people with special needs to play tennis. How cool is that? And it lights us up.
Yeah, it's just fun.
What better is that? You can live a life, and
God just wants us to be in love with our lives.
Right?
Whatever that means. Like you do that, you have a life worth living, and don't let anyone take that away from you.
Amen to that.
Greg, anytime you want to come talk about plants and growing, and I feel like we could have had a 3-hour, we could have done a Joe Rogan today.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm going to subscribe to your podcast too. I'm so delighted to have you in my world. Thank you.
Right back out to thank you.